Hello all loonies and normals, my name is Joe Silver, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about something just a little different to what I used to talk about, because I know that last time I said I wouldn't be doing these vlogs again, or at least the chances of me doing them again would be very low. But what I'm going to do today is something a little different to what I used to do, because what I used to do was talk about just video games or mechanics in video games that I had opinions on. Well, because Twitch is running Doctor Who, the classic Doctor Who episodes on Twitch, I decided this week I would talk about Doctor Who. Not only that, I'm 2 subs away from 100, which is a personal goal I set for myself, so that's another reason for my coming back. Sorry, anyway, as I was saying, I'm going to be talking about Doctor Who. Now, what I'm actually going to be doing is looking at, well, not actually looking at the differences per se. I'm not going to be listing off the points, the difference 1, difference 2, difference 3. But I am going to be giving my opinion on the differences between old Who and new Who, because there are a few of them, and I do have quite a few opinions on them. But let's start with the main one. The main one is, in old Who, the adventures were split into episodes, so several episodes could be one adventure. There were 4-parters, 5-parters, 6, 7, 8-parters, yeah? However many parts they wanted. Now, in New Who, it's all done within a set amount of time. Now, my opinion is that the old way is much better, because in the old way, it was on all year round, whereas Jodie Whittaker regenerated back in the Christmas special, which everybody must have seen by now. Yet her first episode anyway, hasn't aired yet. We're still waiting for it, and it's now June, and there was talk of it being October before her first episode airs. So it's like, what is the heck? So there's this huge gap where we're sat round twiddling our thumbs wondering what kind of Doctor she's going to be like, whereas in the old one it was on all year round. Pure and simple. Each week they had a part of an adventure, and then you had to wait till next week to watch the next one. There were no huge gaps in time where you were waiting. It was pure and simple, once a week, all year round, and that was that. Another thing is the regenerations, because we were talking about Jodie Whittaker. Now, I will say one thing about the regeneration, and hint, this is a spoiler in case you haven't seen it, but if you haven't by now, what on earth have you been doing? In the Christmas special, Peter Capaldi regenerates to Jodie Whittaker. Now, that in itself is not a spoiler. They advertised that she would be the next Doctor long before the regeneration scene, but it's more about the regeneration scene itself that I was going to talk. It's about the fact that, you know, he gives this long speech, which was very him, by the way, about you must never do this, you must never do that, you must never do this, never be this, among other things, never be cruel, never be cowardly, etc, etc, etc. This big long speech that he gives. If you want to look it up, you just type in the YouTube, into YouTube, Doctor Who regenerations. You can find the scene there. But he gives this long speech, and then he regenerates, finally, by the way, after refusing to regenerate so many times previously. And then what happens? We get Jodie Whittaker. Now, instead of getting the funny, I'm a girl, you know, thing that you would expect, similar to what you got with Matt Smith, the comedy routine you got with Matt Smith, all you got is she looks at the monitor, using it for a mirror, goes, oh, brilliant, and then everything goes to heck, and she flies out the TARDIS. And I thought, well, that's just rubbish. The first half was great, you know, he gives his long speech, very him, and then her part was just rubbish. So I thought, thanks a lot, you know, at least give us some comedy. Anyway, moving swiftly on, that's my opinion on that. But the point is, with old Who, with the regenerations, they were not standardised. That's a thing. The regenerations were never standardised. It was not that big ball of orange yellowy light coming out of them, standing there going, ah, you know. It was not that. It was not standardised in that way. In the old Who, you didn't know what the regeneration would look like. You just knew that they were regenerating because the episode told you so. And that was another thing. It wasn't like they told you months in advance, by the way, the next Doctor's going to be. You watched the episode and it was just a story he didn't make it through. And it was just this one thing that happened and suddenly he's regenerating, and that was the first time you knew that a regeneration was coming. And it was like, wow, okay, now we've got this Doctor. That was it. There's no big fuss. There's no, coming soon, Doctor so and so. It was not saying, oh, the next Doctor will be John Pertwee, or the next Doctor will be Tom Baker, and there's everybody cheering, oh, yay, or whatever. It wasn't like that. It really wasn't. It was just a story he didn't make it through, a particular story where he left the show. And then, to be honest with you, regeneration came to be a standard part of the show, but the fact of the matter is, when they started Doctor Who, when they started with William Hartnell, regeneration didn't exist. What I mean by that is they had no plans for regeneration, but William Hartnell was getting old, he kept flubbing his lines, he was having to spend less and less time filming because he was getting old. And I mean, you can't really have a go at him for that. I mean, the guy was old. It happens. But at the end of the day, they realised that he just could not do it anymore. But they wanted to carry the show on, so they said, well, what are we going to do? And they said, right, we will make it so that he can become young again. That he can become a different actor, but it still be him. So regeneration was invented, but they didn't actually call it regeneration then. All you saw was a really close-up of his face. You heard the TARDIS sound, and William Hartnell moved aside, Pat Troughton got in his place, and with a bit of film jiggery-pokery, he turned from one to the other, and regeneration was born. Now, like I said, they did use the word regeneration. They certainly didn't use the standardised modern way of doing it. His face just morphed. Boom. Suddenly he was a new person. As it went on, and because they accepted that this was now part of the show, the regeneration, it meant that when it came time for an actor to leave for whatever reason, for whatever various reasons, they now knew they could keep the show going because all they needed was for him to regenerate. But these, as I said, these regenerations were not standardised. The first one I've just described. The second, the Time Lords of Gallifrey, because that's another difference. The Time Lords of Gallifrey were not gone in the old one. Gallifrey was not destroyed in a time war. There was no such thing as a time war. It still existed. It was still around. People even went to Gallifrey, not just the Doctor, but sometimes his companions went to Gallifrey. There were stories that were set on Gallifrey. For example, at one point the Doctor became the president of the Time Lords. He became their top guy. The president, the prime minister, he was, you know what I mean? He was the top guy at one point because the story called for it, and because he went to Gallifrey and won an election and was elected in. So Gallifrey was not gone. It existed, but in the second Doctor's reign, in the end of his reign, the Time Lords accused him of interfering in the affairs of other planets, something that he should not have been doing because it was against the law of the Time Lords. They were to look on through all of time and space, but they were never to interfere. And he had been interfering. Now, he argued that there was great evil in the world and that somebody had to do something about it. So they said, well, fine, if that's the way you feel about it, we agree. We agree. We will make you regenerate and we will send you to Earth. So, forcing him to regenerate, for his appearance to change, because even then they didn't use the word regenerate, they just said your appearance has changed before, it'll change again. So that's what they did. They changed his appearance, and then suddenly he's John Pertwee. Now he's locked on Earth. He can't remember how to use the TARDIS, he can't dematerialise, he can't go to other planets. For a short time he is locked on Earth, and his entire stories are locked on Earth, one set time, and that is how he became part of UNIT with Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. That's how the story went. And then we got the one with John Pertwee to Tom Baker. He was just sat on the floor and it just sort of, he morphed again. Yeah? And I could go through all of them, but you get the point. In each case, the regeneration was different. It was not the same. Now, I mean, again, if you really want to see how different they all are, look it up on YouTube. You can get the entire regeneration from the start to finish, from the very first one in Hartnell's era to the modern day Doctor Who, all the way through. There is a video for it, so where it's specifically those regenerations, so you can find them, and they do exist. So, you know, so if you want to see how different they were, there's videos out there. But that's the point, the regenerations were not standardised, it was not the same thing every time, and the regeneration thing was not made a big fuss of. It was not, yay, the Doctor's going to regenerate in this next story, and here is the next Doctor. Didn't happen like that. And then, but let's move on, let's go on. Another thing is this sonic screwdriver. The sonic screwdriver in the modern Doctor Who, I'm sorry, but it is a magic wand. In the modern Doctor Who, it is a magic wand. It has 1,000,001 functions. It does whatever the Doctor wants it to do. In fact, at one point, the Doctor said to Amy Pond, point and think. So at some point, it developed telepathy as well, because it could read the mind of what you were thinking about. But the point is, it became a magic wand. When, these days, the Doctor's in trouble, how do we get him out of it? I know, sonic screwdriver. It does, the only thing they ever did to try and make this thing less of a cure-all and less of a guard tool was say it doesn't do wood. I mean, come on, really? That's the best limitation you've got. It has no limitations. It does whatever the scriptwriters decide they want it to do. It is a magic wand. Yeah, I'm telling you, one of these days the Doctor's going to shout Expelliarmus. Okay, sorry, Doctor Who reference from Tennant era, but no, seriously. Seriously, the thing has become a magic wand. It does exactly whatever they want it to. Classic Doctor Who, the first Doctor, he didn't even have a sonic screwdriver. Such a thing did not exist. He had other things that he had to use, like his mind. He didn't have such things. Second Doctor was the first one to get a sonic screwdriver. But that does not mean that all Doctors subsequently had a sonic screwdriver. Most did, but not all, even after the invention of the sonic screwdriver. But the first Doctor to get one was the second Doctor, and when he got one, it was literally a screwdriver. That was all it ever was when he had it. The first scene you see of the sonic screwdriver, and you can look this up on YouTube, because so I've seen it. Somebody puts a gun on the table, and he says, "Look, let me show you my technology. It's clearly not of your time, is it?" And he puts the gun on the table. The person he's talking to, the Doctor goes, and the screw rotates out a little ways, and he goes, and the screw goes back down. That's the first scene. It was used as a screwdriver. It was literally, that's what it was used for. And he said that the only reason he got it, I think they said, was because he was locked in a jail cell, and they said, well, how are we going to get him out of here? And so they gave him a sonic screwdriver, because they said he could vibrate the lock, make it turn, and he could get out. Well, that makes perfect sense. Sonic vibrations. If such technology could even exist, I know it probably can't, but if it could, that's the sort of thing you would expect it to do. This is what I'm saying. They wanted to make sure that whenever the sonic screwdriver did get used, it was used in a way that you could look at, you could say, well, yes, if such technology could exist, that is the sort of thing it could do. For example, John Pertwee used it to vibrate mines and set them off. They went boom, he could then get over the minefield, right? Because he went pew, 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 and he vibrated the mines and they exploded. Now that, again, as I say, vibrations. And yes, he used it as a sonic lance once, the fourth Doctor did. And I think the second Doctor did as well, because as I say, they've been showing it on YouTube, not YouTube, on Twitch, I beg your pardon. And I think the second Doctor also used his sonic screwdriver as a sonic lance. But with that one he did something with it and it looked more like a gun shape where he was doing it. But either way, the sonic screwdriver was a sonic lance. Like an acetylene torch that you use to cut through things. And they did that with it. And I know what you're going to say, oh, Tennant did that as well. Well, yes, he did. But when he did it, the place he was cutting from was down here, and the thing he was cutting was up there, because he was on one of those window cleaner the window cleaner lift things, you know, that they have on buildings. And he was in the lift, and the thing he was cutting was the wire right at the top. He was miles away from it. When they did it, when the second Doctor and the fourth Doctor did it, they were not miles away, they were right by it. Because it was, like I said, it was meant to be like an acetylene torch, meant to be like a lance with the sonic vibrations to cut through. That made sense. That's what I'm saying. They only ever wanted it to do things that a sonic screwdriver could do if such a technology could exist. Now, in the modern one, as I said, my opinion, it's become a magic wand, but we won't go into that all over again. You've just listened to me talk about that. But another difference as well is, in the old Who, Doctor Who was an unknown quantity. He was not this person who everybody knew, and there were legends about this man. This is the man we get the word Doctor from, you know, the oncoming storm, the destroyer of worlds, the this, the that, the other. He was not any of that. He was just somebody who dropped out of the sky, out of nowhere, and helped along as he went, helped out people as he went, and then left. In fact, it was the fact that they didn't know who he was that made it more difficult, because they didn't know who he was, very often they were suspicious of him. Very often they thought he was the problem. Oh, he's the newcomer, he must be working with the enemy. You know, they didn't trust him because they didn't know who he was. They had no reason to. I mean, he certainly didn't have psychic note paper like the modern one does to go, this is my identity, and then it's blank, but they see whatever he wants them to see. It doesn't work like that. He was unknown. He called himself the Doctor. He says, I'm the Doctor. This is my companion so and so, whichever companion he happened to have at the time. And that was it. He called himself the Doctor, but they never knew who he was, and there were times, as I said, where he was not trusted because he was an unknown quantity, because they had absolutely no reason to trust him. Whereas these days, he needs a psychic note paper, because if he comes up and says, I'm the Doctor, immediately, apparently, everybody knows who he is. He's this great big hero, he's this oncoming storm, blah blah blah. You know, his legends are written throughout the universe, blah blah blah. But in truth, he never was. He was never. See, for example, like with the Capaldi era, they started talking about the lonely god. He was not a god. He was just a man, a Gallifreyan, a Time Lord. He could travel in time and space. And he did so, and he helped people out. That's all he ever was. He was no god. He was not some immense thing that could destroy worlds just at the click of his fingers, that armies would run away at the mention of his name. They didn't know his name. They didn't know who he was. But talking of his name, here's another fun fact for you. Everybody argues over what the Doctor's name is going to be. What, you know, are we someday going to get a reveal of his name? We know his name. His name is Doctor Who. That was his name. At one point anyway, his name was Doctor Who, because in one of the episodes of Hartnell era, a computer that apparently doesn't get anything wrong, called Wotan, well, it's spelt Wotan, W-O-T-A-N, but it's said Votan. When asked what TARDIS means, a thing that, according to the people who are on Earth and who created it, it shouldn't have known, it answered time and relative dimensions in space. Now, okay, it put an S where perhaps it shouldn't have done, but the point is, it knew it. So that's what I'm saying, it shouldn't have done, but it did. And when it wanted the Doctor, it said, Doctor Who is required, because that was his name. His name was not some great mystery. It was not the answer to the oldest question in the universe. It was not something that, if he ever spoke it, whole worlds would implode and we can't possibly speak his name, it is too terrible. His name was Doctor Who. He just happened to use other names. For example, sometimes he didn't use Who, he just called himself the Doctor. Sometimes he was Dr. John Smith. In fact, in the Pertwee era that I was telling you about, where he was stranded on Earth, because he was going to be staying there a while, the Brigadier needed some form of name to give to the people to register him as working for UNIT. So he says, well, my name is John Smith, Dr. John Smith. That was it. That was the name he established for himself, Dr. John Smith. And he was but his name was Doctor Who. He also had a nickname, Theta Sigma. We found that out in the Tom Baker era and in the Sylvester McCoy era, that his nickname while he was at college was Theta Sigma, because he met somebody called Dax who had this wonderful Brixton accent. And the point is, he was a friend of the Doctor's. He knew him in college, so he says, Feet? Hello, Feet, it's me. Don't you remember me? So he's there with this wonderful Brixton accent, apparently. And even the Doctor says, where did you acquire this extraordinary accent? Well, he says, I landed on Earth, didn't I? And I was looking to procure some stuff for my TARDIS, only I got caught. So apparently he got caught and sent to prison in Brixton, so he had to learn the lingo. So he comes up with this lovely Brixton accent, apparently. But anyway, the point is, he was calling him Theta Sigma, because that was his nickname. So that was another name he had. So he has had many names. But it was, in the old one, it was never a thing of legend. It was never something that must never ever be spoken. That nobody must ever know, and that there was only one reason he could ever tell his name to anybody. You know, his name was known by that computer anyway. Doctor Who. In fact, that was the name they used in the credits. Doctor Who. Doctor Who, William Hartnell. Doctor Who, Pat Trumperton. Doctor Who, John Pertwee. Now, okay, some of them credit scenes didn't say Doctor Who, they said Doctor or the Doctor, and they put the name there. Okay, so yes, it obviously at some point it evolved from Doctor Who to just Doctor. But the point is, when looking for a name, they didn't go far. It was the title of the show. It was who he was. It was not a question, the oldest question in the universe. It never was. The new Who has built it up as some amazing thing that we must never ever know, and we could not possibly know, because who would understand it anyway and all this. Yeah. Going back to the Capaldi regeneration, he said about his name, no, they wouldn't understand it anyway, children might, blah blah blah. Again, if you want to look at that, you can. You know. My point is, again, his name was Doctor Who. That was it. That was his name. I mean, I think Missy did comment on it, and I think they tried to acknowledge it. As Missy said, oh, he did call himself Doctor Who at one point. That was actually his name, but he changed it. And okay, maybe that's happened, because as I did say, the credits did at some point change from Doctor Who to just Doctor. Yes, even in the classics. But my point is, we're all looking for a name. He's got one. He's got one. It's been long established in canon. So, you know. Anyway, I think I've been rambling on quite enough. I never do time these things, but I think I've been rambling on quite enough. You know, and let me know what you think on what I've talked about here. Let me know your opinions in the comments below. If you like what you've seen here, leave me a like, a sub, and as I say, a comment. And if you leave me comments talking about what I should talk about next week, then I might do this again, and I will hopefully be able to do this for a little while, because my plan is to carry these on, but it does definitely needs support from you guys, because if I don't get subjects to talk about, I'm going to burn myself out again like I did last time, trying to think of something. So please, please, please leave me something to talk about. Leave me a comment saying what you think about what I've talked about here. Just, you know, let me know that you enjoyed it even. Whatever you want to say, without swearing, please. You know, let me know. And anyway, I've been Joe Silver. This has been my channel, or this has been a vlog. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.